Could be. Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Tonight we're learning Maseches, Chagigah, Daf Chavav. We'll be stopping on the top of Chav Zayin. Tomorrow we'll have a very short blot. I actually, anyways, have to be somewhere at 9 tomorrow night. All worked out. Hashgacha Pratis perfectly. So all is well. What? No, over here. 10 minutes of Torah.
No, I know, but we put it on Zoom.
Of course. For tomorrow night's shiur, just like this as usual, same as usual. Yep, exactly right. So we're starting at a fresh Mishnah, 4 lines from the bottom on Daf Chav Hey Amud Beis. The Mishnah opens with an idea that really we wouldn't know without knowing a little bit of Jewish history. So we'll read the first line of the Gemara and then we'll look at a Rashi. The Mishnah writes, Min HaModi'in V'lifnim, from the city of Modi'in, which is 15 mil or so outside of Yerushalayim, V'lifnim, and inward toward Yerushalayim, Ne'emanin al Kli Cheres. Then we trust in Am Haaretz in regards to the tahor status of an earthenware jug. Min HaModi'in V'lachutz. However, outwards from Modi'in and outwards, meaning further away from Yerushalayim, Ein Ne'emanin. Then we don't trust the Am Haaretz. We only trust him within 15 mil of Yerushalayim. Wow, what does that have to do with anything? Either we trust the Am Haaretz or we don't trust the Am Haaretz. Why is this happening? So then the Gemara, Rashi explains as follows. Rashi is the second line into the wide lines. Dibur hamaschel masnisin min hamodim v'lifnim. Says the Gemara, Modim shem krach rachok miYerushalayim tesvav mil. Modim is the name of a city that's 15 mil outside of Yerushalayim. Now, mimenu v'lifnim, from that city and inwards, litzad Yerushalayim, closer to Yerushalayim, ne'eman, and we trust kadarim, those who make pottery, who are amei haaretz, likach mehen kli cheres hadaken, kigon kideros kosos v'kitonios, these very small vessels, she'ef shar below hain, we need them, we can't be without them, but we wouldn't make them in Yerushalayim. Uvi Yerushalayim, Rashi says, ein osin kivshonos mipnei ha'ashar, lo l'sid v'lo l'kderos. We're not allowed, says Rashi, we're not allowed to have the factories that make seed, that make lime, and that make pottery, because the smoke would blacken some of the walls of Yerushalayim, unacceptable. So the Chachamim had to come up with a pattern. They needed the Kli Cheres, they needed the Klei Cheres for Beis HaMikdash stuff, to bring Kodesh, to transport it. But they couldn't have it be in Yerushalayim because we weren't allowed to make them in Yerushalayim. So then the Gemara says the limit is Modi'in. And that's what our Mishnah is talking about. From 15 mil and inwards, from Modi'in and inwards, all is well. And then we trust that person. Ketzad, back in the Mishnah, 3 lines from the bottom on Chav Hey Amud Beis, Ketzad. How does this din work? So says the Gemara, Hakadar, if you have the pottery maker, Shehu Mocher Hakderos, if he's the one who's selling the pots, Nichnas Lifnim min HaModi'in, if he is within the distance of 15 mil from Modi'in to Yerushalayim, Hu Hakadar, the person who makes the pots, Vehein Hakderos, and the pots, Vehein HaLokchen, and the buyers, Ne'eman, everyone is trustworthy to say that this is still Kodesh. However, Yotza, if he's outside of that boundary of Modi'in, then Eino Ne'eman. And the Gemara picks up with an obvious question from our Mishnah, which is that if you look back in our Mishnah, it says min hamodi'in v'lifnim, and then it says min hamodi'in v'lachutz. Now we're learners, so our brain should be saying ad v'ad bichlal or ad v'lo ad bichlal. We don't know if modi'in is inside or outside. It's actually listed as both. From Modi'in outside is bad, which means Modi'in is bad, and from Modi'in inside is good, which means Modi'in is good. So which one is it? So says the Gemara, we have a brisa that's just as confusing. Modi'in, Tana Modi'in, Pa'amim kilifnim, Pa'amim kilachutz, black on white. We see that there's a problem that sometimes Modi'in is listed as inside, in which case we trust the Am Haaretz and Modi'in, and sometimes not. How does that work? Ketzad, the brisa writes, the last line of Chav Hey Amud Beis, the Gemara responds, Kadar yotze v'chaver nichnas. If you have the Kadar who's coming from within 15 kilometers going into Modi'in, and you have the Chaver, someone is coming from outside of Modi'in to inside, and he's nichnas, then we treat Modi'in kilifnim. Because then from the perspective of the buyer, he's come into the 15-kilometer range. However, if it's Shnehem nichnasin, if both are coming in from outside, they're coming into Modi'in, or Shneim yotzin, or both of them are walking outward into Modi'in from Yerushalayim, then we treat it kilachutz. Then Modi'in is considered to be a place where we do not trust Amei Haaretz. On the top of Chavav Amar Aleph, Amar Abaye Fanana Mitanina, we have a brisa that's just like this. It's our Mishnah. What does it say? It says that a pottery maker who is selling pots, and he goes lifnim min hamodi'in. He comes inside to Modi'in. Taima de lifnim min hamodi'in. Hamodi'in gufa lo mehemet. Maybe we would infer from there that in Modi'in itself we don't trust the Am Haaretz. And then at the same time, ema seifa. Later we have yotza eino neman, that if a person is from Modi'in and outwards, he's not trusted. Ha Modi'in Gufa Ne'eman. Seems to be that maybe we do trust him from the word Yatsa. So it says the Gemara, Elalav, exactly like we said earlier, Shma Mina, Kan B'Kadar Yotze V'Chaver Nichnas. That's when you have the Kadar going from inside the 15 kilometers into Modi'in, and the buyer is coming from outside of the 15 kilometers into Modi'in. That is when we trust the person. That's when we say Ne'eman, and Kan B'Sheshneim Yotzen O Shnehem Nichnas and Shma Mina. And the distinction remains true. So when our Mishnah says Modi'in V'Lachutz and Modi'in V'Lifnim and leaves it murky, it's not murky. There are two different cases, and that is how the Gemara delineates.
Is it only, why does it only mention that particular city? Is it only in
The Chachamim had to pick
direction?
the Chachamim had to pick a consent. They had to pick a diameter of a circle around Yerushalayim, and they picked Modi'in.
Okay, so they said that city and then everything in that circle.
Everything in that circle within 15 kilometers.
So if it was 15 mil from Yerushalayim, that's north, east, west, and south, or just whatever direction?
It's a really good question. I mean, from the text of the Gemara, it doesn't appear that way, but because the way Rashi talks when he's describing this from Sachin is that Shem Krach Yerushalayim Tesvav Mil, and I would imagine it goes in all directions. I didn't look it up, but that was my assumption. But until you asked it, that was my assumption. I don't know. The Gemara says 9 lines down or so on Chavav Amud Aleph, Tana Ne'eman and B'kli Cheres Hadakin LeKodesh. We trust this Am Haaretz as it relates to small pieces of pottery, as it relates to Kodesh, one of the higher levels of sanctity. And Amar Reish Lakish Vu Shenitlan B'yado Achas, it has to be the type of container that's small enough to grab in one hand. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu She'ein Nitlan B'yado Achas, even if it's bigger and you cannot hold it in one hand, we still trust the Am Haaretz. Amar Reish Lakish Lo Shanu Ela Reikanan, we're only talking about vessels that are empty. That's when we trust the Am Haaretz. Aval Malayan Lo, but if it's full, we don't trust them. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Malayan Ve'afilu Apikrasuso, even if he has his clothing, a hat in there, it doesn't matter. We still are going to trust him even if it's full. The Amar Rava, Rava says a very interesting din, one that we've seen pieces of earlier. That it could be that the liquids themselves would be tamei, but the container would still be tahor, and that's fine. We still trust the Am Haaretz for that. The Alta Tama, don't be shocked by the fact that we can have contents of a kli that are tamei while the kli itself is tahor, because where did we see this? Because the Gemara says on the first of the long lines on Chavav Amud Aleph, Shaharei Lagin Malay Mashkin, if you have a barrel or a large container that's filled with liquid, Lagin Tmeos, Tumas Shiva, you can have the liquid be tamei that requires Tumas Shiva. Lagin, the container can be tamei for 7 days. Umashkin tahorin. So we see that we can have a split between the contents of and the container of. That brings us to a new Mishnah on Chavav Amud Aleph, about a quarter of the way down, second line into the wide lines. If you have a money collector who is coming in to take some of your assets, he's got a lien on your property, you owe taxes, you got to collect. So they came into your house. And similarly, if you have a thief, he had a change of heart and he decided to return that which he stole. In these cases, both of them, the Gabai and the thief, are ne'eman and lomar lo naganu. We trust them to say that they didn't touch something in a way where it would make the vessel impure. That's pretty remarkable. The guy just stole something. Even if he had a change of heart, do we trust him? Let's see what the Gemara says in a little bit. Let's continue the Mishnah. Ubi Yerushalayim, that's true everywhere. In Yerushalayim, ne'eman and ala kodesh, we trust these people, even for that which is a loftier level of Kodesh, regel, and if it's in the time of the year when it's actually holiday, then afala truma, then we even will trust him as it relates to truma. We even trust the ganav and the gabai. Says the Gemara, I'm confused. We said in our Mishnah that we trust the gabai to say that he didn't touch it, or in minhi, we have a brisa that doesn't say that way. If you have money collectors that go into the house, habayis kulo tamei, the whole house is tamei. You don't trust the guy to say I touched it, I didn't touch it. He's a money collector. He's going to grab whatever he sees. He sees a Rolex, fantastic. We're even now. He's going to touch whatever he wants. So that's what this brisa says. How does that work with our Mishnah? So the Gemara says third of the way down, 5 lines into the wide lines. One Mishnah is talking about where there's a nachri with you, where the gabai is accompanied by a nachri, and the other is talking about a case where he's by himself. And so what does this mean? So says the Gemara, Ditznan. The Mishnah writes about this as follows: if there is a non-Jew, a nachri who's with the money collector, with the gabai, ne'eman and lomar lo nichnasnu, he's only trusted to say if he entered the house. But we don't trust him to say that he didn't touch something. So that is the new brisa that we just learned at the opening of the Gemara, the Urim and Hi.
So you're saying
we don't trust the money collector if he's with a goy.
Okay.
If he comes by himself, we do trust him. And now we'll see why. Who cares if he's a company? What does that have to do with it? Did you touch the kli? Did you not touch the kli? Who cares about the goy? What does one thing have to do with the other? So says the Gemara, no. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar, these two Amoraim said, there's a little fear. Maybe you're not allowed to touch the kli. He might say an untruth. He might say a lie because he feels pressured by the nachri. He's a governmental official. He doesn't want to get caught in some. You shouldn't have touched it. You should have touched it. He doesn't want. We can't trust him because he has an external pressure of the nachri or the malchus with him. What's the difference between these two answers? My beinayu says the Gemara halfway down. Okay, what if you're with a guy? He's your employee. He doesn't care what you do. He's not a government official. He's not a chashuv guy. Who cares what you do? So then under those circumstances, we would still trust the gabbai. But here where there's a nachri, we don't trust him. What about the ganav? Says the Gemara Minya. Hold on one second. You're trusting the ganav? Says the Gemara, Haganavim shenichnesu l'soch habayis. If you have a ganav who's in the house, we say that he's going. The places that he tramples is going to be tamei. Look at Rashi just to our right. Of course, Rashi says anything that he steals, obviously that's going to be tamei. So how can you tell me in our Mishnah that which he stole, it's such a grace at tzaddik now. You stole and gift, good job. But you stole it should be tamei anyways. Why would you say that it's not tamei? This is the power of tshuva. By the way, this is retroactive. It's after he stole. It's an unbelievable din. He stole it. While he stole it, he was in Russia. He was doing a Maisa Avera, should be tamei. But he did tshuva an hour later. And then the kli is tahor. That's unbelievable. The din of the chachamim of tuma on that kli was retroactively undone because he did tshuva. Such is the power of repentance. That's an unbelievable halacha gemara that you touch something and made it tamei, but when you do tshuva, then it's as if you didn't make it tamei in the first place. Dekanami, this is actually implied in our Mishnah that this person did tshuva. What does our Mishnah say? Dekatani, shechzir esakelim. That's a pasuk in Chumash. And that's the example of a lav hanita klase. You don't get malchus for gzela, because if you steal, because you have a way of self-repairing by doing tshuva and giving it back, so therefore you're in the clear as long as you give it back. So this guy gave it back, he did tshuva. Fine, that's what the Gemara says, and that's what our Mishnah implies by when it says shechzir sakelim shma mina. We had said as well, Yerushalayim ne'eman and ala kodesh, that we trust an am haaretz even in Yerushalayim as it relates to kodesh. Tana ne'eman and al klicheres gasim lekodesh. Even very large containers we trust the am haaretz. Kol kach lama. Why is that? Because as we said, she'ein osin kivshonos b'Yerushalayim, because it's very, very difficult for the people. They can't buy them in Yerushalayim. You can only buy them when you're outside of the city limits in a place up to and including Modi'in. So what are you supposed to do in Yerushalayim? It becomes time. We need to trust the am haaretz. We need to trust them. Rashi Rashi on the previous bottom of Rashi on the bottom of the previous page, we didn't get that far in the Rashi. He says, we don't put in rabbinic decrees that the people can't handle. And the people can't handle a rabbinic decree of not listening to an amaretz as it relates to kli cheres, because everybody needs a kli cheres. It was considered a tzorech for the sake of the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, we have a din derabanan in general about not trusting amaretz, but it doesn't apply within the city limits of Yerushalayim. Next. Did we finish this? Oh, one more. How do we know that by truma? Normally, we're even more strict in some cases by truma than we are in kodesh. Why do we trust in am haaretz here? Because of the pasuk. Everyone is considered a chaver, even the am haaretz. Beautiful drasha. The pasuk makes it as though all of them are considered chaver. They're am haaretz. Even so, we still trust them as it relates to truma within the time frame of the regel. That brings us to yet a new mishnah. It was common place that haposeches chaviso, a person who opened up a barrel. Let's say you owned a restaurant or you some place where people were going to get their fill of wine, and they would come in, they'd ladle things out on their own. You'd keep the top of the barrel open. People would come in, they'd ladle things out, they'd pay a kopek, whatever money they were paying, and everybody went home. So let's say you have your barrel that's open, or you have some dough that people are going to be using, al gav haregel, and it's done over the course of the holidays. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yigmor, that even though we only trust an am haaretz under those circumstances, but because you already opened the barrel, we trust that you're allowed to then finish that barrel under the same assumption that the am haaretz that was involved was tahor during that time of the regel, like the kula we've been discussing. The chachamim omrim lo yikmor. No, once the chachamim, once we hit the end of the holiday, whole thing's over, end of conversation, and then you're obligated to treat it as tamei. So the Gemara opens. Yasiv Rav Ami v'Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Where were they? Akila de Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. They were on the porch of Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Pasachad v'Amar. One of them said, "Ma'oshi anichena leregel acher." Okay, if you want to say like the Chachamim of Lo Yigmor, maybe we can solve this problem. We know that on the regel, we trust the Am Haaretz. So let me take this barrel of wine. I'll cover it up for the next few months until Pesach, and then it'll be fine because we trust Am Haaretz. Amar Le'idach, we don't know who's talking, but one of the Amoraim said to the other, Yad Hakom Mashmishim Ba Ve'at Amar Senechen L'Regel Acher. Everybody's sticking their hands in there. Everybody's sticking their. You can't trust these people. They're tamei. We only had the kula on the yontif. What do you think was happening over yontif? You're going to wait 3 months and let people stick their hands in there. Of course, they're going to be tummy when it's not a regel. So he says back to him, that's what just happened. They all stuck their hands in there. What are you talking about? So says the Gemara, what a terrible argument. And listen to this important distinction. Up until now, tumas ha'aretz beregel rachmana tahara. We have the pasuk in Chumash to tell us that from the time that Yontif starts till the time that Yontif ends, we have a din that there's no tumas ha'aretz, so leave it be. Everything is fine. That's the din. And what are you saying? Elahashta tmeyahi. Now this is mamish tuma. We at least had a heter over the regel to say that the Am Haaretz who touched it, we don't have that din right now, so we're going to be mekel, fine. But now that it's post-holiday, it's just usser. There's no kula. You want to save it now for another? It's already tameh. One person sticks their hand in after another, the whole thing is tameh. So says the Gemara, maybe there's a machlokas tanaim within the Rabbanan. What did the Chachamim say in our Mishnah? They said lo yigmor. They're like, okay, yeah, you can't finish it now. I understand, but what about for the regel? And then there seems to be a machlokas between these two Amoraim. So maybe within the Chachamim, nema ketanoim, the tani chad yanichen leregel acher, the tani idach lo yanichen leregel acher. Maybe there's a machlokas within the Chachamim saying, some say you can save it for another regel, some say you cannot. My lav tanoim, isn't that a machlokas tanaim within the Rabbanan? Says the Gemara, no, it's not a machlokas within the Tanaim. It's just stama machlokas, like we have in our Mishnah, not within the Rabbanan, but between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. The one who says that you're allowed to leave it is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. And that's how the machlokas is parsed out, but not that it's within the Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, these two shitas cannot be oriented this way. But Tizbera, can you possibly say that Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that you can let it stay? What does Rabbi Yehuda say in our Mishnah? He says, Yigmor, you're allowed to finish it. But so says the Gemara, but Tizbera, you can't say that Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that you can let it go to another holiday. Rabbi Yehuda, Yigmor Kamar. You don't have to wait. He says it's mutter to drink it right now. We already extend the kula of the Am Haaretz trustworthiness after the Chag. You save it for another holiday. Drink it right now. There's no reason to wait at all. Everything's fine. Ella, it must therefore be that the shitas are reversed. Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion who says that you should not hold on to it for another holiday. And the shita that says that you are allowed to put it for another holiday as the Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, that also doesn't make sense, because if Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah holds that Yigmor you can drink it, then what does it mean lo yanichenu? My lo yanichenu according to Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, she'ein tzarech lahanicha. You don't need to. You can drink it. It doesn't mean lo yanichena. It doesn't mean like the words seem to imply that lo yanichena you're not allowed to. You can if you want. That doesn't matter. You can drink it. There's no need to hold off. You can drink it. Very good. That brings us to yet a new Mishnah, 5 lines from the bottom of Chavav Medalef. Let's continue. Once a holiday was over, Ma'avrin al taras azara. They'd go through the Beis HaMikdash and they would have to purify all of the kelim in the Beis HaMikdash. That is a big job. You want to hire a moving company for that one. They had to pick up all of the kelim and they had to be metahar everything. Now, over haregel yom shishi, if a holiday ended and the next workday was a Friday, lo hayu ma'avrin mipnei kavod haShabbos. It was too much work to do on a Friday, and if the holiday ended on a Thursday, they would not do this tahara process before Shabbos. They'd wait until Sunday. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af lo b'yom hey. Even if the holiday ended on Wednesday, and then it ended up being that on Thursday, that was the next day at work. Still, that was Thursday, Friday wasn't enough time to matar everything. She'ena kohanim pnuim. The kohanim are very busy. What were the kohanim busy with? 1 line of Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. Tana she'ena kohanim pnuim from what? Milahotzi b'desha. Oh my gosh, there were so many korbanos. There were so many ashes, and they had to move them out. That was what they were doing. Just shovel. I mean, I'm sure they weren't using only shovels. What huge bin after huge bin. What was that thing called? The psach there. We learned about this in Tummy. This like kind of large pot with 2 handles, whatever. They were dumping it in there and they would then schlep it out. Okay, next Mishnah, 2 lines from the bottom. Keitzad ma'avrin al taras azara. How are they matahar everything in the Beis HaMikdash? No big deal. Madbilan es hakelim shayib b'mikdash. They take all of them. All right, everybody, grab a couple of things. We're going into the mikvah, and everybody's going to tov them. The omrim lahem. Rashi says we're talking about amei haaretz. We say to the amei haaretz, hizaharu. You should be careful. Shelo tigu b'shulchan. Please don't touch the shulchan amei haaretz. You're going to ruin things. Don't touch. There were always backups and backups to the backups of kelim in the Beis HaMikdash. That if the first one became tummy, then we'd have a backup to use. No problem. Everything in the Beis HaMikdash requires Tevila, chutz mi mizbeach hazav umizbeach hanachoshes b'beishen kekarka divrei Rabbi Elazar. These things are treated as part of the ground. We have a principle in regards to tumah that anything that's mechubar lakarka cannot become tummy. Chairs in this room could become tummy. The walls, the carpet, the ceilings, well, maybe the ceiling tiles could, but anything that's not removable cannot become tummy. The chachamim omrim no mipnei shehin mitzupin because they're covered. Now we had said Tana hizaru shema tigu b'shulchan uvimenorah. Our Mishnah said that we only had to tell them to be careful about the shulchan, but this brisa says that we need to tell the Amei Haaretz they have to be careful about two things. They have to be careful about the shulchan and the menorah. The Tana Didan my time alotani menorah. Why does our Mishnah only tell us about the Amei Haaretz as it relates to the shulchan that they should be careful, but not about the menorah? Because shulchan. By shulchan, we have the language of tamid, and therefore we have to be careful with that. However, menorah lo ksiv tamid. The author of our Mishnah excludes the case of menorah. We don't have to warn the Amei Haaretz about that because it doesn't say tamid. Okay, the new brisa that we just brought at the beginning of the Gemara. Why did you include menorah? He says because kevan dechasa because the pasuk says because there is a menorah that is opposite the shulchan, and in fact, that's the lay of the land, is that we know that one's on the north wall, one's on the south wall, opposite one another. It's keman dechsiv tamid. It's as if we make an equation that they're very similar to one another, and they both have a status of tamid. What about the other shita that doesn't learn like this? He says you can't learn that. When the pasuk says ves hamenorah nochach hashulchan, what does it mean? That was not to tell you whether or not it's susceptible to tuma. That was to tell you the location of it. It's exactly opposite the menorah. The shulchan and menorah are exactly opposite one another in the Kodesh. So it says the Gemara. Oh, good. So then the Gemara says, so maybe we should learn that the susceptibility of tuma for this thing has only to do with the fact that it's a stationary item. Maybe we should say that the shulchan is just, even if they touched it, it wouldn't be a problem. So it says the Gemara can't be my time. Well, what's the reason why we don't say that and why it is susceptible still to tumah? Because dumi the sak, it's comparable to a sak, masak metaltal male v'rekam, just like something that can be carried both full and empty. Afkol metaltal male v'rekam, anything that can be carried full and or empty would then be problematic. And hainami, the shulchan as well, metaltal male v'rekam. We know that the shulchan was picked up. How do we know this? Let's have a read. We're a third of the way down. Chavav Amud Beis. Kidreish Lakish. Damreish Lakish. Ma'idich ala shulchan tahor. The pasuk says that the shulchan is tahor. What does it imply if it says that the shulchan is tahor? Mechlal shu tamei. That it's possible for the shulchan also to be tamei. Ve'amai. How could you say that it's going to be tamei kaliyat? So it's meant to be stationary. Ve'inu makabel tuma. So it says the Gemara Ella velamet shemak biano. So Taka, they did used to pick up the shulchan. We learned about this. I think that they picked up the shulchan. Does that say that here somewhere? Gimel. Maseches Yuma. Yeah, I think we did learn. I remember learning it somewhere. I think it says the Gemara. So what did they do halfway down? Umarin bola ole regalim lechem apanim. They'd raise up the shulchan to showcase the showbreads. You need to see how much a Kadosh Baruch Hu loves you. Siluko kisiduro. The way that we remove the challah is as it was put on. There was a miracle that took place with the lechem apanim. Kisiduro kachsiluko. That as it was put in, it came out. That the bread was still warm as though it came out of the oven a whole week later when they were about to take off the showbreads, the lechem apanim, and switch them out. So that's what's going on here, and that's why we can't use the argument of it's stationary, because it's not stationary. They used to pick it up, and because they picked it up, now it's not mechuber lekarka, and therefore once it's then it's comparable to a sak, and anything that's metalta mali or rekam, then it's susceptible to tumah. The tepukli mishum tzipui. Maybe we should say that. Listen, it's covered in gold. What's everybody so worried about? It's fine. It's not the wood. You're not touching anything other than the gold. We learned in the Mishnah, a table and another type of foldable table, seemingly some type of table that was buildable. If the covering of the tzipui, the covering of metal that was on there was scratched off, that if there was a small space that was not covered, so then we would say that it's susceptible to tumah because the wood was accessible. Rabbi Yehuda Omer makom hanachas chatichos, it had to be a bigger space in order to be susceptible to tumah, and that bigger space was for pieces of meat that were larger than the cup. Now, either way, the chitema shiny, and if you want to say that this is taka true, that this is the parameter, and shiny atze shitim dechashivi velo batli, then maybe the wood that was used for the shulchan was so special, an expensive type of wood, atze shitim dechashivi, they're so chashiv that they're not batil, they're not secondary, they're not batil, they're not nullified to the coating. In other words, the coating can become tamei, but not the wood itself. We wouldn't say that with such special wood. That's only true. Hanicha l'reish lakish. To Amar lo shanu ela bekli achsalgim haboin mi bedinas hayam. because he says that with an inexpensive wood, there would be one halachic status, and with expensive wood, there would be a different halachic status. With the expensive wood, it's not batel to the coating, and with the inexpensive, it is batel to the coating. So fine, I understand that. That makes perfect sense. Kli mesamim is that more expensive wood, the wood of the atzei shitim. However, that only works according to Reish Lakish. According to Reish Lakish, who says that the wood will always be batel, even if it's a high-level wood, it'll be batel to the coating that's around it. Michael Meimar. Then we don't understand how this Gemara would work. Maybe it depends on how long-lasting the coating is. That question was already asked and answered. Well, what if the tzipui, the covering, is only temporary? Or something that if the metal covers over the lip of the wood. Different types of coatings. What did he say back to Rav Yochanan, to Reish Lakish? Rav Yochanan responded, Lo shna b'tzipui omed, lo shna b'tzipui she'en omed, lo shna b'chope es levaz v'zav, lo shna be'eno mechope es levaz v'zav. Doesn't matter. Under all circumstances, the halacha is different. So if that's true, then how do we understand this question according to the sheet of Rav Yochanan? Says the Gemara, Elashayni shulchan, the table is different. The Rachmana karya eitz. Yeah, you're right that the shulchan is covered in metal. It's true, but the Torah doesn't refer to it based on the metal. How does the Torah refer to the shulchan? As wood. And because it refers to it as wood, therefore it's susceptible to tumah, even though it's covered. Says the Gemara, Dechsiv HaMizbeach, Eitz Shalosh Amos Gavoa Ve'arko Shtayim Amos Mikza Osav Lo Ve'arko V'kirosav Eitz V'daber Elai Zeh HaShulchan Asher Lifnei Hashem. The pasuk is speaking specifically about the shulchan, and we refer to it as eitz, and therefore, even though it's covered, doesn't matter, still susceptible to tumah. Says the Gemara, the pasuk is a little difficult. Look at the first word of the pasuk on the top line. It says HaMizbeach, and then it ends with shulchan. So asks the Gemara, Pasach b'mizbech v'sayim b'shulchan. The pasuk starts out by talking about the mizbech and it ends with shulchan. So then the Gemara teaches us an extremely important idea, one that we know of and one that rabbis do speak about from the pulpit periodically. And with this, we'll close. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Damrei Tarvayu. They both say the same thing. Bisman shebeis hamikdash kayam. When the Beis Hamikdash is built, when it was around, mizbech mechaper al ha'adam. Then the mizbeach could atone for our failures and our frailties. However, achshav shulchano shel adam mechaper alav. A person's table, the way that they treat their table, v'chule, with all the musar that goes into how we should treat our Shabbos tables, that is what is mechaper on us. We will stop right here. Mir Hashem, tomorrow we'll have a short 10 to 15 minute shiur. We'll finish up the Masechta. We'll have a little rikud. Maybe we'll have a quick l'chaim, and then we will pick up again on Wednesday with the first blot of Maseches Yevamos. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Oh, sign up for the dinner once I send you a link, which I haven't sent yet.